folks, this is me, Vishwas Nayan, the host of this podcast, and I'm really glad that Rohini ma'am is coming on my podcast. And trust me, it took us a long awaiting talks that we did. Like, even before the podcast, we had a long set of talks that we really wanted to share, but we'll share it in the podcast, by the way. And I'm deeply honored because somebody who really didn't imagine that she will be a part of this tech world, and now she paved her way into the tech, and now she's evolving as an engineer. I forget the fact that we do this tech, we do that tech, but the way you evolve as an engineer, that's what really fascinates me. And I'm very glad that Rohini ma'am is willing to share her journey in cloud tech, whatnot. She has been in communities and a lot of places. And if it's AWS in India, Rohini Gaukar ma'am is always there. So do check out all the talks from our YouTube channel and also in other places. And make sure that you listen to this podcast completely because tagdi cheeze honi wala hai. Like, we are just going to demystify amazing stuff here. So let's get it started, ma'am.
First of all, stop calling me ma'am. I mean, um, IT way, everyone is having equal opportunity. So we are no
Yeah,
one's ma'am and sir. I know it's out of respect, but makes me feel too old.
sure,
uh,
Rohini. So
thank you so much.
So let's just
And this,
demystify this journey of being a student. Like, being a student is something which paves us like crazy amount. Like, that really shapes what we are for the tomorrow's world. So I just wanted to know, what was your journey as a student, and what was your journey that really paved through the academic that you had, right? The amount of education that you had to just go through, and also think about the teachers who just influenced you over a very long time. And I just wanted to also want you to cover what was your journey as a professional, because both of the things
okay,
just go hand in hand for our generation, at least today.
definitely. But by the way, thank you first of all for having me here. This is a good opportunity for me as well. I've checked out your videos and just being part of so many great speakers, it's really humbling. So me, born, brought up in Mumbai, India, obviously. I'm also based out of Mumbai right now. Uh, uh, Born, brought up here, typical middle class family. So typical schooling as well. Obviously Mumbai hai. So I used to actually, when I started learning, I was in a two medium school, like Marathi and English medium. So I had a good humbling background from there as well. So I had friends in different places. But then became young. I had a lot of health issues when I was a little older in the school. So school was really not a fun place for me. Later part of my like seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th was not really a fun part for me. Because of my health issues, I hardly attended school. But you know, I feel there are, like you said, right, a lot of teachers have influence, and sometimes those are good influence. Some teachers are not always good, but they still have some kind of influence, right? So when I was very young, I used to do a lot of, school mein annual function. Now I know this has been pandemic and a lot of kids may not know this, but annual function may you take part in all of these annual functions, like singing and dancing and being on stage, being a back end person, like setting up stage, everything. I enjoyed the whole process of being a stage person. And when I got into my health issues, I couldn't be that person, right? So I had to be at home, and that's when I started focusing more on my studies. I was always an average student. As I'll be like first in the class all the time, nothing like that. Normal, average, uh, 60, 75% distinction person. I mean, nowadays kids get 99 and 100% as well, but to be honest, that time getting 75 was difficult as well. A normal school kid, but I always wanted to be an actress because of what I was doing. And that's why, when 10th came and I was like, I cannot manage everything, let's just do commerce. So a lot of people find it surprising that I've done commerce in my 11th, 12th. And the reason I'm telling this is because a lot of people ask that, I come from a commerce background. Can I move into IT as a career? And I'm like, I'm an example of that. I did 11th, 12th in commerce, uh, and I did in IT. And I think I was telling you this story that one day, one of my professors, she was very impressed with my tech skills, because ghar pe, like my brother had left computer, and I used to assemble it, and I used to take it apart, and I used to do Windows installations, and then used to have those virtual machines were very new, very, very new. And it was a new thought of, burning your CDs and DVDs. It's that time I'm talking about. So I used to do these hands-on stuff, and my professor was very impressed. And she was like, why don't you take BSc, Bachelor of Science in IT, which was quite new then, I think a year or two in the university. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, if I can just move from commerce to science, I don't have to worry about physics, chemistry, bio. Bio was the toughest for me, but physics, chemistry was still fine. I was like, let's do it. Meanwhile, I was still doing theater, by the way. So I used to, and this is not college theater, okay? I was used to do theater properly, local theater groups mein jaake I used to do theater. So I had my hands in both of them. And when I was doing BSc, I was not sitting at home. I've seen a lot of people do this, which my friends did as well. And I used to be like, guys, you're wasting your vacations. Like, first year, then you have a break. The second year, you have a break, and third year, right? I used to do a lot of courses. For us, we didn't have online courses then, right? We had to go to a instructor-led course with 3 months and 4 months, and you had to find out information about it. So we used to do that. I did a lot of courses in testing because my professor said, "Hey, you're good at finding issues in code. You can code, but you are good at finding issues while the code is there, and you can debug, and you can be a good tester." So I did, okay, chalo, let's do testing. Let's learn something around Microsoft Visual Basics, or let's learn about Microsoft Office. Never know which will come handy. So my focus was always on skills. Like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I was at that stage, and most of us are. Very few I've seen, like one of my committee members, 10-year-old, knows what he wants to study in, like MTech and all of that. And we were a generation who had nothing to do, because 2008, to be honest, was recession. So there were no jobs in the market.
Dot
Everything
com
was
bubble, right?
just
Dot com bubble, something.
2008. No, so dot-com bubble was 2000
Two,
sometime,
two, yeah,
but
yeah.
this
So
one, 2000, this was
financial recession, yeah, financial.
financial recession. Dude, we had only one IT company come into placements, and everyone else was a BPO. And everyone was so disheartened because we didn't know if we are getting jobs, we are studying. And a lot of my friends went into MTech and MCA and other stuff. Me coming from commerce, only one negative was my mathematics skills were not so strong. So doing derivation and integration would take me a very long time than my friends who came from science background. So for me, cracking entrance exams was very, very difficult. Luckily, I did get offer letter from that one company who had come in. I cracked in the interview, and then I get into that company. Uh, Trained on Java. I love Java, by the way. That time, I think we were had Java 1.2. I think we were just Java 1. This is that time ago, and I love Java actually. So I did a lot of courses around it, and I was like, okay, tester, Java developer, kuch to banenge, like we'll do something of these sorts. And luckily or unluckily, I don't know how to put it. I guess I can say luckily. What happened was, when I was working in this company and I was being trained for Java, uh, for 4 months, by the way, 4 months training on Java. Once you join the company, okay, so the company paid us for getting trained. I made good contacts, and I made contacts with the HRs, with the faculty members who were teaching us, and those faculties were actually employees of the company. So it helped me build network within the faculty itself and finding good projects. So one of those projects was the R&D team. So they were setting up an R&D team for cloud computing. Uh, Many people said, don't go in R&D, they don't have money and you'll be stuck in something that will not go anywhere. And I was like, what do I have to lose? If I'm getting to learn, right? I'm getting to learn and upgrade my skills, and I'm using some of my skills, it's fine. If it doesn't work, we can always move on, but let's play around, because I truly believe your 20s are for you to experiment, to learn skills. money is something that will follow. Like, Three Idiots has that dialogue, right? Kabil bano, safalta apne aap aayegi. I actually hold it very true to my heart. मैं 2 बार theater में देखी है वो movie, so I actually hold it very close to my heart that yes, I want to be a skilled person rather than someone who wants to earn more money. I think that is something I learned very early in my life, and I tried to implement it. I got into this R&D team, and guess what they were researching about? Cloud computing. This was 2009, 2010. Cloud was still a hype. Like, it was still a crazy hype. There were so many cloud providers that don't exist today anymore, frankly speaking. There were small companies, and we were doing POCs. We were trying to understand the differences, and we're trying to understand if we can pitch it to our customers, and what's the way forward. So I loved AWS as a tech then. I really fell in love because when I was comparing it with others, it felt like very promising, and the core tech was very strong as well. This is the time when VPC was just launched or auto scaling was just launched. It's that early. And it was fun, right? So for me, I picked that up. I worked with a lot of solutions architect internally. We had projects that started coming in. The R&D became COE, and there was a practice that was set up. So I was doing hands-on cloud migrations in 2011, 2012. That time it was such a, like, there was so less a supply of people who actually had hands-on experiences with cloud, and I was actually doing cloud migrations for customers. And I think that gave me a boost of learning a lot more. And I was those blog sites, please don't open those, but I used to find write blogs about how do you install MySQL on EC2 instances, and how do you do JBoss clustering on AWS EC2 because multicasting support me, and all of that. Like, I did a lot of playing around, and I used to write about it. There was an IEEE paper on based on an idea I had that what AWS was doing with auto scaling. How can we do that with different clouds, especially private clouds, because then private clouds didn't have that thought process of immutability, of treating your servers as a cattle rather than pets. That's the thought process we had. Obviously doesn't work right now, but uh, all these things led to me that okay, let's do this. And one day I found an opening. The company vision had changed, that they didn't want to do cloud anymore, and I saw that as, let's go, because I have picked up a skill. I see a vision in this. I see a growth in this, and the market sees a growth. If the company cannot see it, um, I think I have to be loyal to myself first, rather than being stuck with a company that doesn't see the vision. So I started searching out, and I applied to a job in Cape Town. Didn't know on the map where Cape Town existed. I just wanted to go. uh, I'll try to make it short what I learned. So why did I tell you this whole story? Because whatever I planned, I wanted to be an actress, didn't work for me. I wanted to be a tester, didn't work for me. I did commerce, moved into science, moved into this. What I'm saying is, you will plan and plan and plan in life, but life will take you somewhere else. The only thing you can do is plan, but also be a little bit flexible, that if things don't work out, you can pivot. Second thing is, always think about what is the hot thing in the market. I'm not saying hypes. Cloud was a hype, but I did play with it. I did play with the different clouds. I made my own judgment call. I read papers. I wrote papers, right? So you have to, that there is no secret shortcut there. You have to do that hard work yourself. There is no one's going to say, oh, you do this certification and you become an expert in that particular tech. That doesn't happen, right? So you have to get your hands dirty. That is definitely there. And the third thing, like I told you, aim for skills. As a student, I know not everyone is blessed that their financial stability is well at home, but aim for skills, because the moment you look for skills, the more you add the feathers, the more beautiful it's going to look like. So that's what life as a student, as a journey taught me. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it really answers that. Some people ask, like, what's the recipe for being an engineer like this, of this sort, having a payment of $350,000, and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like
Wish we had
that's
a secret list, right? Everyone would have done it then.
the recipe is very simple, just hard work. There's only one ingredient of that,
Hard and smart work. Don't
yeah,
do
that's
just hard
also
work for the sake of it, right? You would spend a lot of time into it, something that is not going to give you any new experience or any new role. Like even now, I do this. Like every year, and I assess myself. What are the new skills that I've learned? What is the new thing that I've learned? You have to keep thinking about that, and you have to train yourself to do that. You can't train it yourself when you're in your 30s and 40s. You have to train yourself since when you're a student, and that's why it's important to know that run after skills and not money.
that's true. That's true. And like, I know you're not that old to be saying, okay, cloud is not existing during your time, but I just want to ask this question because how did the cloud technology evolve over a course of time? Because now we see we need a VNet, we need to have this traffic only entering into our system, this and that. But back then it was just VMs. You are just going to go there, upload the files there, just make a folder of it, then upload a new folder. Oh my God, like that's crazy amount of work there. Like I just wanted to realize like what was that cloud technology back then and how did it evolve? Because you saw different ways in which, because when I talk to people from your batch, right, my everything that I've learned, like let me just say, okay, I know serverless. I'm like, मैंने कुछ भी नहीं किया. I didn't do anything in life. I've just learned something. That's what I feel about. So I just wanted to ask you this question because I know, I'm not that old to say that I've worked in the professional world, but you have seen how this industry evolved. So how did it evolve over a course of time when you started till today? Like it will be evolving, but what is it today according to you?
When I was in that R&D team, right, and so there are two aspects, right? One is the R&D aspect of it, that uh, you know different cloud vendors, then everyone was trying to figure out what cloud is means for them, right? Not we didn't know what cloud meant. It was just, for some people, it was just giving virtual machines on some of their racks that are sitting in some place and giving out virtual machines, or for some people it meant giving that differentiation of public cloud and private cloud, and IaaS and PaaS and SaaS and CaaS and computing as a service and whatnot. Like there were so many different definitions, and everyone was trying to figure out what is happening. So that is one aspect of it. But the second aspect is before cloud, right? And this is because I work with so many customers who we're trying to have these projects, and sometimes these projects would be in their own data centers, or my company had their own data centers as well, so they would host these applications there. And the problems that we talk about, the scale aspect, and now we have so many awesome terms about reliability and hiveability and fault tolerance and scale. Those things really were something that meant different then, because for them, they meant that uptime should never, like, you shouldn't reboot a machine for so many years. People would be scared to reboot a machine, uh, and they would just keep patching up that same machine, and people were needed on support all the time because kuch na kuch to phatne wala hai, and you have to have documentation. And when I was working with this gentleman, he was a DBA, and he was working on this project, and he was helping me deploy the database, and it was a database that I had not worked with. So he was helping me with installations and setting up, and he was like, that's it took you 2 minutes to increase the, like, not even 2 minutes, but I'm just saying that EBS, we had to increase from 100 GB to maybe 500 GB, and he'd be like, that's it, 2 minutes, is that it? Like, I thought it's going to take a lot of time. That's what I'm like, no, that's it. That's the beauty. Like, you don't have to wait so long to work with a virtual machine. And even then, you rightly said, like, people now talk about serverless and everything so quickly, and it's amazing, right? This tech is definitely amazing, but people still don't understand the basics, which they miss out. Like, what makes serverless serverless? Like, what is happening? What's the magic behind it? You should also spend a little bit time understanding that. If you don't do that, then you're just building code and hosting code, which is fine, which is totally fine if you that's what your aim is. But if you want to say you're a serverless expert, or you want to say you're containers expert, you should also a little bit know about what's happening behind the scenes. Yeah, You can't just read up a document and put in some steps and say, I still fear calling myself an expert in any of these technologies, because I feel there's so much that we still don't know what is happening behind the scenes. And for us, when AWS, I'll give you example of AWS. AWS had a classic. So we never called it classic then, it was just classic. But AWS may, if you make an EC2 instance, you will get a public IP, and that instance can be opened up to the entire world. I mean, security groups would be there, but instance is open to the entire world. That was still cool, right? I mean, I don't know where it is hosted. It's somewhere in US, and accessing it. And then VPC came and we were struggling crazy. How do you set up VPC? How do you access that virtual machine? And look at it today, like you're accessing serverless, you don't even know what that virtual machine, like what configuration is that virtual machine. So from there to this one, there is a long journey that we see in the AWS platform itself. Even with AWS, like if you see today, AWS is still inventing. People think that, it is that it, like what's next? But if you see that even with serverless, we have come up with Firecracker. Firecracker is a micro virtual machine. There are a lot of things that are still evolving. You never know where this is going to go. Like 10 years ago, if you had asked someone, we would have something like serverless, I don't think many people would have said yes, right? We wouldn't have thought, we would have thought, Acha, we had Beanstalk, where you upload a zip file and it will create everything for you internally and upload, that's it. But we never imagined about this thing. So there are still so many things that could happen in future that we have never even imagined. And I think it's still evolving and there is still a long way to go. I mean, 200 plus services, just wait for reInvent. But that's definitely gonna grow. And from a professional aspect, I think we learned the basics. We learned the basics of computing, networking, storage, databases, security. We learned the so much basics and fundamentals of the cloud that everything else is an abstraction over it. So it's easier for us to understand where that abstraction is coming from. If you start from the abstraction itself, then you're never going to understand the basics. So I always tell people that, okay, just to get started with, pick up a serverless. If you are into, let's say, Kubernetes, pick up a Kubernetes project that you already know and see how to deploy that on AWS. What are the different ways you can host it on AWS? What are the pros and cons of each of the way that you want to do it? Which way will fit your particular use case or different use cases? And then go and learn the basics also. Don't stop there. Go and now that you've understood something in your language, because you understand Kubernetes, go and understand AWS now. Okay, AWS says EC2. What happens behind EC2? What is happening? How is EC2 working? If you ask people what are hypervisors, a lot of people won't even know what are hypervisors in today's state, because kya farak padta hai, right? But then you should know the basics of these things. I hope that answers your question, though.
Yeah, it really answers my question, because trust me, like I've seen n number of cloud professionals. Nobody says they are expert in serverless only. Even though I've seen a doctor who is not a doctor, like he has done his PhD in CS and he's working in the serverless world, and he literally says, I don't know serverless completely because it's evolving over a course of time.
It's evolving, exactly.
And he always points out to one or the other developer advocates to me, like, you go and ask him the question. Like, I don't know much here, I don't know much there. And I feel that, educating professionals, right? I think developer advocacy and DevRels, like, they have their highest standard set already. Like, they are like the gold standard for anything that is going to happen for the industry. I can rest assured that, because over the course of time, I think community is going to be the best college for every person. Like, it's not like you have a degree here, you get a job there. Probably if you are good with how you communicate with the people as a leader, if you evolve there, probably you're going to be the best professional. So my question on educating people, because educating professionals, it's a whole new level of complexity that everybody needs to solve today, because some people know this, some people know that, how to bridge the gap between this and that. So what's the role of developer advocacy and DevRels in the education of the professional world? Because it's a question which is going to be $1 billion question for the tomorrow's world, because it's not AI which is coming and behaving like a teacher. It's like we bridging the gap between what people know today for the tomorrow's world. So what's the biggest role of all these that we are talking today in educating professionals today?
So first of all, you've touched a very important point, right? DevRel, why was DevRel or developer advocacy or technical evangelist? Why these roles were made? Were because they were trying to bridge a gap between the consumers of products and the people who are making those products. Because product makers should know what is the actual feedback from your consumers, and consumers should be able to use that product as well. So their developer advocacy is an advocate between these two people. Now, over the years, this role has evolved very crazily, and I think the last year has made this role go into a different tangent itself. Now, when it comes to a role like this, a lot of people ask me like, what is this role about? Like, it's very difficult to explain because no one plans to be a developer advocate. Trust me, no one. I mean, there would be few people, but many of my colleagues who are into DevRel, who are into developer advocacy, they are engineers first, they are builders first, they are developers first. They have been in those teams, they have put in that hard work, and now they want to get those stories or get that experience back to the community. They want to give it back to people who taught them, but it's not easy because otherwise we all would be just teachers, right? I think there are different aspects to it. The first is giving knowledge back is a very selfless thing that you have to learn yourself and you have to give it back. And you don't just have to, yeah, acha, I did it like this, and that's why you do it like this. You have to understand it thoroughly yourself, and you have to explain it to someone in a way that they would understand. Even if they are beginners to that topic, they should be able to understand. Second thing is being a DevRel person needs to be a good storyteller. You have to be able to. I'm still learning. I became a DevRel developer advocate last year in this team, and I'm still learning so much from my teammates and the way I've been doing presentation or my talks, or I'm telling my story. It's evolving over time. I mean, it's just me, but the story keeps evolving. So you have to be a good storyteller. And I think for me, my theater background helps a little bit that, I'm not scared on going on stage. At least I'm not scared of that. Okay, I'm scared. My content may not meet the mark, but you have to be a good storyteller, right? And I think what you're saying is right. Because in today's world, if you see, all the information is accessible on your fingertips. You want to learn a course, you have that. You want to watch how to plant trees, you can Google it, or you can just YouTube search it and you'll find everything. You can find information at your fingertips. The major challenge for developer advocates is not putting content out, but putting content out that is interesting, that is fun, plus that is knowledgeable as well, that gives you something to learn about. And I think that's where we are going to look at. A lot of discussions we have internally is, yes, we are developer advocates, yes, AWS has amazing products. Like, there's a joke that there are 17 different ways of hosting containers on AWS. Yes, there are, but then just having those ways and not explaining how to do them, when to use them, what to do with it, or if there are issues with it. So this comes with the job, right? If a customer comes and tells me like, Rohini, this is good, uh, great, this is bad, that needs to be a priority. That our service teams need to know that this is something that our customers don't like, or this is something that our customers want to see in the future build. This is a very important aspect of developer advocacy as well, that you have to be, yes, I am an AWS employee, so I have to talk nicely about AWS, yes, but I'm also a developer advocate, means I am have a moral duty towards my developers as well. I have to give their feedback, whatever it is, good or bad, back to my service teams as well. That, hey, this is not good and we need to fix this. Because in the end, to be honest, it's the developer's experience that counts rather than how many customers we have, what's the kind of experience we are giving. And here I'm not just saying developer bolega to Java developer and Python developer. I'm not just saying developer. I'm just saying a person who's using it, could be an architect, could be an engineer, could be anyone. But that experience is something important. And I think we still have a long way. All these big institutions that you talk about, I think we all still have a long way in giving that best experience. And that's why these roles are very important. we still need a lot more people doing this job. And I'll be honest with you, I feel like I still feel, I mean, I have super high imposter syndrome always, but I still feel there's such a long way for us to be in, even in India, right? Um, for me to reach out to a lot of people and wanting to help them, to educate them, or to learn from them as well. So there's still a long way, and I think we will achieve it. But yeah, I hope that answers your question
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
That
it
we
answers my
do have
question.
a long journey, but yes, that is the responsibility of this role, and it is not possible without the community. So I always say community should be honest. You shouldn't be rude. There's a difference between being honest and being rude. Constructive feedback is something everyone appreciates, so I always look forward to that.
Yeah, I think you did one interview with Mani sir
Yeah.
from AWS. He says, I'm 25 years in IT, and I'm like, my age is 23. I'm like 2 years before I
I
was
know.
born, he was in IT and he has seen much more chaoses than what I have seen today.
I
So
swear.
it's always
And
there.
money is an amazing speaker as well.
Yeah. When he told that, I got shocked. Like, it's like 25 years. Like, I never expected, because I still remember my first phone that I saw was the state of the art, was like Galaxy Y, which was Galaxy Young, which was that small phone, which was this touch screen, first phone. Like, that was the first one. That was a state of the art to me back then. And today it has
Wow.
evolved. Like, that was that. Like, today it's
Yeah.
like 2005, and the people who are born after 2005, they have less patience. People, if you want to learn patience, come back to me, because I know how I work with 1 mbps per second. That was the max that I was able to get during that time. So
Think about people who never had internet.
yeah, think about people who never had internet as well.
So school, I'll tell you honestly, in school, I nowadays kids are doing these projects, and I'm that's what you have amazing uh, what do I say, platforms to do that. But for us, miss call dena, like you should give miss calls to your friends. Like one ring is like your friend wants you to come to play or something, because even calling was so expensive. And we were of the dial-up kids. My brother got his first laptop in desktop in his engineering days. And I still remember by mistake he kept the internet line on. So dial-up is your internet would come through your telephone line. So if someone picks up the telephone receiver, whatever you're downloading, gone. Okay. So again, start from zero. And he would have 3,000, 4,000 ka bill just downloading movies or whatever. And then mom would be giving him left and right. From them to come to today, I see my nephew who's like a year or two old, and he knows how to do swipe, unlock his phone, dad's phone, go on YouTube, play his favorite things. And I'm like, what is happening? Like these kids know these things day in, day out. And ask my parents to do that, it will take them an hour to do it. What this young kid can do in 2 minutes. So patience you learn from older generations who never had phones to begin with. Like if you
I
have
know.
to do a STD call, you have to go down STD, ISD, PCO. Ask someone who to tell them like what is PCO, STD, ISD. Today's generation will not know that.
Yeah, it's like everything is there. Like, WhatsApp video call, everything. You get a chance to, like, this, like, so, like, I was reading a paper back then, which was Vivo IP something, which was used in Skype and things like that. And I feel so fascinated that today it has evolved like anything. So the
Hey,
question that
floppy
I
disk used to have is
oh
1
yeah.
MBP. Yeah, floppy disk was 1 MBP. We used to have so many documents and CDs and DVDs. I still have some CD, DVD somewhere here, and it was crazy. Like we learned how to create ISO burn images and all of that.
Hero
And
burn something,
today,
yeah.
yeah, today that 1 terabyte of iCloud is also feeling less, but tabhi everything would be packed in that 700 MB ka CD or that 4 GB ka DVD. It
That
was
was
crazy
VCD,
times.
right? It was VCD stuff.
VCD. See,
Yeah, VCD. I still remember that, yeah, we used to get that. So we have evolved, like
yeah,
the hardware is now the state of the art, according to me, because we saw like lagging hardware, which used to crash sometimes and things like that. But we have serverless in ML, we have serverless in all the deployments that we are seeing today. Like, a lot of things are evolving. So We are still discovering a lot through the cloud, but have we really achieved a state of the art tech today? And also, what is the need for the tomorrow's world to really discover? Because there is some need that cloud has always given out. Like DevOps was not considered as a culture there, and now DevOps is a culture. Now everybody is
Yeah.
starting to study about it. It's like if you don't know what's an agile, you are like, okay, you are lagging here and there, you are lagging there, you're thinking
Right.
of something is going down here and whatnot. So of course there is a lot to improvise. So what is that state of the art that we are yet to demystify and yet to discover for the world tomorrow?
You're so right. Like there are, like I mentioned, like serverless is at the end. I don't think so. There is still so much more we have to see from the software part of it. I mean, what I mean by is the products that get launched or the software aspect of it, of application development experience aspect. Even from hardware aspect, I think there's still a long way to go. For example, few years ago when we were talking about like cloud and this is going to be owned by someone else, and they keep like AWS keeps adding so much capacity day in day out, just because the growth is so high and customers want more and more from the cloud itself. If you see the AWS, right, when we started we may have, I don't know, I don't even remember what instance types we used to have, but I guess it was M series then. And now you see that CE also has C3, and then C4 came, and now C5 came, and we will have or may have more versions as well. That's because that AWS is not just inventing in the software aspect of it, like you see from EC2 or serverless or containers aspect of it. AWS is also evolving in the hardware aspect of it, right? It's because the way our networking is done. We are trying to pack in more into that tiny little cable that keeps going from one place to another. There is a lot more that is being packed into that. There's a lot of innovation there. There's a lot of innovation in the kind of processors we will have. Like I don't know if you've heard about it, but Graviton 2 came out, and it's much more powerful than what Graviton used to be. It's much more cheaper than what the first version it used to be. And that is what the evolution will also be. That cloud is already so cost efficient than running your own data centers, but I think we still have a long way of making it much more cost efficient. I hope it becomes a bit easier. I know a lot of my community members will be like, it's not easier to understand the mechanisms, the different ways you're being built by it. And I'm hoping we get at a point that it becomes easier to understand the billing aspects of these different hardwares. Yes, we want it to become more and more cheaper but cost efficient, I mean, but we also hopefully get to a point that it becomes easy to understand the bills that come out of it. Yeah, I mean, the more widespread it's getting, the more diversified we are getting towards it. And I don't think we are done. I think there's a lot more. Like, for example, let me give you an example. uh, and I think I'll be stepping on, I know you wanted to ask this question, but let me step on a bit of it. That we all have grown up watching movies like iRobot, and we've watched movies that take you to a different world of technology. Have we achieved that? No. Do you think we can afford having an army of robots to help us day in day out? No. Let's not get into the discussion of is it good or bad, but we still haven't achieved, right? Like, for example, AI today, uh, we do have better capabilities of AI than we used to. Now we are better at recognizing speech, at better at recognizing things that we see, better at speaking. Like, for example, a lot of AI services from AWS are help you with all of that, with translating. But are we done yet? No, there is still so many languages that are missing. There are still so many sensory organs that are not being captivated, or there is still so much research needs to be done. And that will definitely happen as more and more data is collected, as more and more diverse data sets we have. And the more smarter our AI will get, is going to take time. Even today, if you see, we do have, I won't say hype, but machine learning is something that a lot of people are interested in. Because, when cloud started, cloud led to have people a bit storage where they could hold data. Uske pehle, like before that, we couldn't hold data. Yeah, that's what I was saying. 700 MB CDs, and even if you buy big racks of hardware, storage was still expensive. So you can't collect everything and store, you have to purge data. But because of cloud, now people thought, okay, this is much cheaper to store data. So let's start collecting all this information. And there was a rise in a lot of big data and a lot of tools around big data and Hadoop and all of those technologies started evolving them. And then people started collecting data. And we were like, collect, yes, now do what with it, right? What do you do with this? It would take days to run certain jobs to get information out of that data. And that's where your whole analytics thing started to, like, it was crazy the way analytics started going crazy. Your BI tools started coming out. Then people thought about, okay, now that we got information, like, okay, this is what was happening and this is how these trends are, can we get more information about the future? Can we do more predictions? Can we take this a little bit step ahead? And that's what led to your machine learning capabilities. Now we took that ahead, we went into AI. We don't know where this is going further. We have to see where it is going further. But that's how the trend you start. And can you imagine that started with cloud itself? Like before cloud, it was not easy to store so much amount of data, but that one single thing led to so many different things. And I'm sure it's going to go somewhere else as well. That growth is something that we will definitely see. And hopefully someday I will have a robot of my own to do chores. I don't want to. But
Seriously,
yes.
yeah, I'm waiting for that because a lot of times, when I see the AI that we have built, that's okay. That was predicted because 10 years before, if you had told me what a computer can do today, I would have laughed at you and told, "Are you mad?" Because when did computer get super intelligence? But somehow we are very close to that. But I know that you have not done
Mm,
ML in your life because I know that you have been working in a lot of cloud and infrastructure.
I Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Python programmer, right? I mean, I have just recently started learning Python. It's not that I've not done it. I've done one or two projects with some of my colleagues and just to get a hang of it, like, okay, what is this hype about? And uh, I know high level of what happens, but I'm not a programmer at heart. I'm not a ML practitioner or an ML engineer. I just know I'm not. So I don't want to pretend being someone I'm not. I'm very good at operations because I've been an operations person. I used to be a developer. I still do code a little bit here and there, create some simple projects that I can help my customers with. But most of my life, I think I've been a consultant and creating POCs, demos, and talking to my customers and making things easy for my customer. I think that was something that I worked on a lot for a while. So yes, I'm not an ML engineer. Sorry, I don't want
Yeah.
to
But
put
I
in wrong
want
words there.
your perspectives on the AI that we might build in the future because it's one of the perspectives that I want to ask all the cloud engineers because there's a different view from what a cloud engineer gives and what an ML engineer gives because ML engineers has deeply fallen in love with it, but a cloud engineer knows what goes behind the software that is
Yeah.
being provided. So I just want your perspectives on those tech that we are talking today. If we build a state of the art AI capability, it's going to be awesome. But I want your perspective on the AI that we might build tomorrow.
See, to build, I think we could build anything. I mean, we could build Javis that we have from Iron Man, right? I mean, you could, but in the end, it's not just about the machine learning. I think there are a lot of things that will come into place. It's, do you have the right amount of data? Do you have the right amount of storage? Do you have the right amount of processing? If you consider the processing power that goes into building such an AI machine, that's tremendous. It's not just going to be a small lambda function that is going to do, right? There are a lot of neural networks that are going to be triggered, and there's a lot of information that is going to be triggered, and there's going to be a lot of processing in the back end. I feel we still have a long way to go, and I'm thinking that there is no possibilities that are going to stop us from building a Jarvis or an Irobot. I think that is what my heart wants to be. Honestly, like I want something like that in the future to come up. But then, yes, there are a lot of implementations of this in medical science as well. Like there are a lot of things that we could do that could help our medical practitioners. Like for example, last year we saw uh, a lot of our first line workers passing away because of a virus. that affects humans, right? So what if we could get into AI that can, like, for example, AWS has a service called as Comprehend. Now, it is a very limited to what it is doing, but what if we go into a science that, can do all these activities without needing a human to be actually be present and be heard by it? I think there's so much to do that. There is a lot of work to be done in agricultural tech. If you see today's world, we are not living a sustainable life. We all want to, but none of us know how to. And even if we know how to, chalta hai, ho jayega, dekhenge, attitude is not going to help. So I think I see a lot of growth, and I've seen a lot of uh, discussions. I don't know how much investments we would have, but definitely there are a lot of discussions in agri-tech. There is a lot of discussions in medical science. And I see AI being part of that aspect of our lives. And I'm hoping someday we reach there. But yes, I think that's my take on it. I'm not an
Yeah,
expert in this
sure,
tech itself,
sure,
but yes.
sure.
No, no. So I mean, when you ask me where AI is to go, I think there is still a lot of time, right, to think about where to AI is to go. Like when I was in Singapore, this was 4 years ago. Yes, I had a customer, and you can still find them out, Rotematic. And then it felt like, wow, these guys can. If they were in beta, by the way, then when we were working with them, and then it was like, if these guys can deliver this, uh, I'm gonna get this machine. So what essentially that machine does is it can make different types of rotis that you have. You just have to add in the materials there, and based on the kind of materials that you have, and based on, I mean, the idea was that based on the materials that you've added and based on the functions that you've selected, it will create the dough. It will create that ready fulkas or rotis or naan, whatever you want. Will create that for you, and you would have ready to eat food to be delivered. And I definitely know that they had a vision, and they definitely are going to keep evolving on that whole vision. But think about it. Someone as simple as making food. Like when I was young, the most innovative thing that we saw in market of making rotis was that presser thing, right? You used to press it, and then you wait for it, and it will heat up, and the roti would come out. That was the most innovative thing we saw. And to that, then looking at this, that is making you rotis, like your mother's soft rotis based on the kind of atta and everything, which is, to be honest, not simple. It's not always same, right? Like if I ask my mother to change atta, she'll again start cribbing because the atta is different. But a machine to have that kind of capability to think about these things and build something as simple as food, I think we have a long way to go with respect to that. Like I mentioned about healthcare, I mentioned about a lot of things. I even forget about what I'll talk about. But the thing is that there is still a long way to go into what we have been doing. And the reason I keep talking, and I'll tell you honestly, the reason I keep talking about a robot is it's not just that it's good to have, but I see a lot of implementations about having a robot. Being away from your parents, you always want someone to be there for them, even if you cannot be. I think a robot in the future with whom I can connect with, and I can know what how my parents are and take care of their health in whatever way possible. I think that is the future I want to look for. I know there are already a lot of uh, uh, robots that are in the market that are being made, but the day we see commercial use of something like that, it's going to be awesome. I know there's lots we can talk about this, but I think for me, AI superpower is that AI to be helpful to people. That is what my superpower would be. Favorite. Hopefully, cloud will help you go there.
Yeah, but like last question from my side, because of course you have seen a lot of firms, you have seen a lot of institutions. Like Netflix wrote an article on, even though EC2 went out sometime, they learned top 5 things by using AWS. And of course, Netflix is the biggest customer of AWS, and Hotstar is also amazing. Like, oh God, like monitoring observability, they're killing it every single day. Like I just read tweets from them. I just read a lot of things. So I feel that, there is always there's a Ben Rockwood. I did a podcast with him. He told that, instead of reading a sysadmin book, Just go back and
Hmm.
read an operations management book, and you get everything that you are doing here, because every customer have their own requirement, every team has their own requirement. They're
Right.
not. So I just want to ask this: some of the best and the worst practices that you saw in the world today, because you have talked to a lot of people, and that experience probably might help me tomorrow as well, and also a lot of people who are viewing this. So your experience in witnessing some of the worst and the best practices.
So when I've worked with a lot of startups, by the way. I have worked with a lot of small medium businesses, we call them SMBs, but majority of my life I've worked with a lot of startups. And something startups do amazingly is adopting new tech. uh, Startups are quick, they are agile, like you said, they're agile. They know when they do their research, they pick up tech, they build prototypes out of it. If it doesn't work, they are okay to scrap it and move on. I think that agility and that flexibility that startups have, it's amazing, right? And a lot of startups do give that amount of flexibility to their engineers as well. Like I've worked with startups, I'm talking name, but with AWS customers, a lot of people think, and trust me, there are still a lot of people, and most of them come from an enterprise background. That's why they think that the decision maker in a company is a CXO. But the decision maker in a company is a CXO, yes, because he has the final say. He has the money in it. He has the designation for it. But it's the developer. So if your developer says that, this is it and this is what we need to do, the CXO has to. The CXO could be a CTO or a CIO or CEO, but they have to listen to it. A lot of people disregard that their developers have this power, and that is wrong. You have to listen to your engineers, because in the end you hired them to do your work. And secondly, they know tech closer than you would read about it, but the person who gets their hands dirty would know about it more than the person who just reads about it. So you're always have to listen and trust your developers. I've seen a company, I'll tell you this very honestly, okay, and I cannot take names because this is not something public, but one of my customers had a huge investment by someone who had their own uh, cloud. Okay. And we were worried that we would lose this customer because that person has cloud and they have this investment, this customer is going to go. But that customer never went. You know why? Because the customer was like, I've built my tech on AWS till date. The experience has been amazing. My developers don't want to move because my teams are something that are more important for me. My teams know that this is going to work and this is how they've been building the team and it has been successful for them. And of course, architectures evolve. That's fine. But I'm not going to move just because someone else is doing an investment in me. And that is the kind of trust you should have on your teams, that you should know what you have been building. And that is a very good best practice, because the moment you start putting your ideas onto your team, like it happened with me, right? The company changed and their thought process changed. You're going to lose good people. You're going to lose the traction and the vision that your developers, I mean, your architects and your engineers and your developers have. So that is the best practice. Listen to your developers, listen to your engineers. They are hands on. They know their stuff. Listen to them. That is very good what startups do. And the worst experience. Okay, hear me out. I've been to meetings where customers would say, we want AI in our project. We want AI in our application. And when you ask them, what do you mean by AI? I don't know. People are talking about AI ML and I want that in my project. While the reality should be you have a use case or you want to achieve something, and then you discuss about what AI ML use case could help with. But customers go with this hype that, okay, this sounds very interesting because everyone else is doing it, I should do it. And they try to implement it and then they fail. And then they say, oh, you can't implement it. The problem is you don't have data. If you have not collected data for a number of years that you've been working with, what kind of what is the machine learning model going to do? What is AI going to do out of that, right? In the end, it's all based on the data and the quality of data that you have. If you don't have that, whatever hype is going on in the market, you're not going to survive. So don't just blindly follow the hypes that are going on. do what you need to do for your use cases for your application. That is the worst thing I've seen a lot of customers do. And trust me, it takes a lot of time to help these people understand that it's not a magic wand that, okay, I do AI and something happens and everyone just loves my project. That's just not how it is. It
Yeah,
takes a lot of time to change that.
yeah, there's a lot of worst practices, and I think this podcast is like me doing podcast with Uncle Bob and all my DevOps heroes. Like, trust me, don't talk too much tech with the people like Rohini ma'am and things like that, because they are going to like kill you in that, because they have been working in tech for like 10 plus years, man. No, don't talk too much
Yeah.
tech with them. Just learn
No,
that
this is more
experience.
fun. I love this. I love this more because that becomes more like a webinar and just a snooze fest. There's just so much tech information out there right now. I think we need to give. I miss the networking part, by the way. So I love talking to you. By the way, what is your experience like? What is your best or worst experience
Mine,
working with someone?
I was almost like a freelancer throughout my life. I worked as a Flutter dude. Like, Flutter was
Nice.
like, what happened to me was 2017. I entered my engineering college. I tried doing an Android course, and I was like, this is not work for me. Sorry for that. No, because it involved a lot of Java, and I didn't understand that. Then of course I did some Python for a while. Then I went to Dart. Dart was amazing. Then I saw Flutter coming up. Okay, then let's just do that. Then from 2018 December, did I started my internship in my second semester itself, where I went to a company and I asked him for an internship. He took me, and we had some discussion for 6 months. Then he gave me a certificate. Okay, fine. Then out of it, then I went to the next company, and that next company asked me to stay in the office for 8 hours. Like, I'm like, what? I've completed the work, right? Let me just go for the hackathons. And I was like, nah, this is not working. So let me just go for the freelancing. And I went for the freelancing, saw a lot of amazing startups which did a lot of Flutter apps. Like, I did a lot of APIs, Firebase, of course, I did a lot of Firebase because Flutter was very near and dear to the Flutter community and so on. And I saw some amazing startup which went to IPOs. I saw some amazing developers who evolved as managers and things like that, because they had the sustainable attitude. And that really led me to urge for that. Like, I'll be very frankly, I left DevOps 4 times in my entire engineering. Like, I just went for that subject, started studying. I'm like, this is not for me. I'll just leave it for a while. Then 4 time, and the 5th time, I'm really addicted to it. Now I'm writing a paper on DevOps, and this is what I'm doing right now. So I think probably sometimes I feel that, I'm researching in a lot of places out there, and I feel that sometimes don't say the complex jargon to your employee. Like, I didn't know that I was doing MLOps research until they told me that you're supposed to write a paper on MLOps. Because we have done all the work which is related to MLOps, but we didn't know what was MLOps at the end of the day. And that gave me a motivation. A lot of people like Scott Anselman and things like that. Even Marcia is an amazing. So thank you, Fuba, for motivating me to get inside a little bit of AWS. And trust me, I just loved the way in which the developer evolved in the industry, and that became a motivation. And the worst practice was people asked me irrelevant questions like, Flutter, why can't you deploy an app here, there, and everywhere? I'm like, this doesn't require AI and ML. It's just simple common sense. So let's not make it more complex. And I think I think because of that worst practice that I saw there, I made sure that I choose a right boss to me, a right guru, and a right sustainable attitude, that I make sure that person understands what I really want to deliver. And I also learned that I should never waste time. And that's what it just made me just ask right questions and move towards the evolving masterpiece of my career. That's it. Not an
Exactly.
exact masterpiece, like to evolve
No,
as
but
a right
whatever.
engineer.
Keep evolving. Keep
Yeah,
evolving.
that's
Like,
it.
don't that comfort zone. See, there are two things, right? I mean, everyone wants to become an expert in something, or they want to be in that comfort zone for a while. Yes, but don't live there. Once you are in a comfort zone, just try to get up and start moving to something different. Uh, but what a lot of people, when I say this, right, what they think is that you let go of what you learned and you move on to something new. I'm not saying that exactly, right? I'm saying that you can't let go of what you have, because that is still your experience. That is still that you've learned something over these years. So whenever I talk to someone new, I just, they ask me, oh, I've been an engineer, or I've for so many years now, I want to be a cloud engineer. So how do I get move my career to cloud? And I'm like, no, that is not how it works. Cloud is not something that you will learn isolated, right? Cloud is something that is in every aspect of your engineering concepts that you have, in every aspect of technology. Now, cloud is not just about providing infrastructure or storage or networking to you. Cloud is about getting into machine learning or data science and analytics and IoT, and like there's a whole new plethora of things that you can get into. So you never have to let go of the past experience that you have. You just have to add cloud as a flavor. Like I mentioned this to someone the other day, that think about it, that you have a bouquet of flowers or bouquet of feathers, and cloud is just another thing that you're just going to add into the bouquet and make it beautiful. Don't think about that you're just going to leave everything that you have and learn something new in cloud and that's going to change your career. That is not happening, because in the end you have to be a developer. You have to be, like you said, you're an ML ops person. Now you add whichever cloud's flavor into that ML ops knowledge, because DevOps is not AWS, right? DevOps in its own is a concept that you learn how to use with AWS or in on-premise or whatever you want to host it. But you need to know that, like, what do you like? You can't just keep learning all the clouds and then say you're a cloud expert. And I'm like, for what? What are you trying to achieve in the end of the day? So yeah, and a lot of companies as well, like you mentioned, right, do 8 hours in the office. Even if you sit there and don't do anything and just sit in the office for 8 hours, I think that's the worst you could do for your employees, and the worst employees could do, just sitting there and not doing anything. I agree.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think thank you so much for actually changing my perspective towards anything. Like, I didn't expect this to be Uncle Bob, John Willis, Ben Rockwood combined and coming and talking on my podcast. And seriously, I really enjoyed this podcast. And folks, please do enjoy this podcast and also make sure that you educate yourself in the right way. And thank you so much, ma'am, for such great insights.
Thank you so much for having me, Vishwas. This was fun. I mean, I learned a lot from you as well. And you gave me a lot of things to think about too. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Definitely will chat with you offline as well. And thank you everyone who was listening to this. Feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn, Twitter for anything you would like to talk about. I also talk a lot. So if you want to just talk to someone, I'm always there.
Thank you so much, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am.